He set to work requisitioning material for his conference, with an assurance that was justified by the replies. With a slight incredulity, the conference which was to begin a new order in the world gathered itself together. Leblanc summoned it without arrogance. He controlled it by virtue of an infinite humility. Men appeared upon those upland slopes with the apparatus for wireless telegraphy. Others followed with tents and provisions. A little cable was flung down to a convenient point upon the Locarno road below. Leblanc arrived, sedulously directing every detail that would affect the tone of the assembly. He might have been a courier in advance rather than the originator of the gathering. And then there arrived, some by the cable, most by aeroplane, a few in other fashions, the men who had been called together to confer upon the state of the world. It was to be a conference without a name. 9 monarchs, the presidents of 4 republics, a number of ministers and ambassadors, powerful journalists and such like prominent and influential men took part in it. There were even scientific men, and that world-famous old man, Holston, came with the others to contribute his amateur statecraft to the desperate problem of the age. Only Leblanc would have dared so to summon figureheads and powers and intelligence, or have had the courage to hope for their agreement. Section 2. And one at least of those who were called to this conference of governments came to it on foot. This was King Egbert, the young king of the most venerable kingdom in Europe. He was a rebel, and had always been of deliberate choice a rebel against the magnificence of his position. He affected long pedestrian tours, and a disposition to sleep in the open air. He came now over the pass of St. Maria Maggiore, and by boat up the lake to Brissago. Thence he walked up the mountain, a pleasant path set with oaks and sweet chestnut. For provision on the walk, for he did not want to hurry, he carried with him a pocketful of bread and cheese. A certain small retinue that was necessary to his comfort and dignity upon occasions of state he sent on by the cable car, and with him walked his private secretary, Firmin, a man who had thrown up the professorship of world politics in the London School of Sociology, Economics, and Political Science, to take up these duties. Firmin was a man of strong rather than rapid thought. He had anticipated great influence in this new position, and after some years he was still only beginning to apprehend how largely his function was to listen. Originally he had been something of a thinker upon international politics, an authority upon tariffs and strategy, and a valued contributor to various of the higher organs of public opinion. But the atomic bombs had taken him by surprise, and he had still to recover completely from his pre-atomic opinions and the silencing effect of those sustained explosives. The king's freedom from the trammels of etiquette was very complete. In theory, and he abounded in theory, his manners were purely democratic. It was by a sheer habit and inadvertency that he permitted Firmin, who had discovered a rucksack in a small shop in the town below, to carry both bottles of beer. The king had never, as a matter of fact, carried anything for himself in his life, and he had never noted that he did not do so. "We will have nobody with us," he said, "at all. We will be perfectly simple." So Firmin carried the beer. As they walked up, it was the king who made the pace rather than Firmin. They talked of the conference before them, and Firmin, with a certain want of assurance that would have surprised him in himself in the days of his professorship, sought to define the policy of his companion. "In its broader form, sir," said Firmin, I admit a certain plausibility in the project of Leblanc's, but I feel that although it may be advisable to set up some sort of general control for international affairs, a sort of Hague Court with extended powers, that is no reason whatever for losing sight of the principles of national and imperial autonomy." "Firmin," said the king, "I am going to set my brother kings a good example." Firmin intimated a curiosity that veiled a dread. "By chucking all that nonsense," said the king. He quickened his pace as Firmin, who was already a little out of breath, betrayed a disposition to reply. "I am going to chuck all that nonsense," said the king, as Firmin prepared to speak. "I am going to fly my royalty and empire on the table, and declare at once I don't mean to haggle. It's haggling, about rights, has been the devil in human affairs, for always. I am going to stop this nonsense." Firmin halted abruptly. "But, sir," he cried. The king stopped 6 yards ahead of him, and looked back at his advisor's perspiring visage. "Do you really think, Firmin, that I am here as an infernal politician to put my crown and my flag and my claims and so forth in the way of peace? That little Frenchman is right. You know he is right as well as I do. Those things are over. We kings and rulers and representatives, have been at the very heart of the mischief. Of course we imply separation, and of course separation means the threat of war, and of course the threat of war means the accumulation of more and more atomic bombs. The old game's up. But, I say, we mustn't stand here, you know. The world waits. Don't you think the old game's up, Firmin?" Firmin adjusted a strap, passed a hand over his wet forehead, and followed earnestly. "I admit, sir," he said to a receding back, "that there has to be some sort of hegemony, some sort of amphictyonic council. There's got to be one simple government for all the world," said the king over his shoulder. "But as for a reckless, unqualified abandonment, sir—" "Bang!" cried the king. Firmin made no answer to this interruption, but a faint shadow of annoyance passed across his heated features. "Yesterday," said the king, by way of explanation, "the Japanese very nearly got San Francisco." "I hadn't heard, sir." "The Americans ran the Japanese airplane down into the sea, and there the bomb got busted." "Under the sea, sir?" "Yes, submarine volcano. The steam is in sight of the Californian coast. It was as near as that. And with things like this happening, you want me to go up this hill and haggle. Consider the effect of that on my imperial cousin, and all the others." "He will haggle, sir." "Not a bit of it," said the king. "But, sir—" "Leblanc won't let him." Firmin halted abruptly and gave a vicious pull at the offending strap. "Sir, he will listen to his advisers," he said, in a tone that in some subtle way seemed to implicate his master with the trouble of the knapsack. The king considered him. "We will go just a little higher," he said. "I want to find this unoccupied village they spoke of, and then we will drink that beer. It can't be far. We will drink the beer and throw away the bottles. And then, Firmin, I shall ask you to look at things in a more generous light, because, you know, you must." He turned about, and for some time the only sound they made was the noise of their boots upon the loose stones of the way and the irregular breathing of Firmin. At length, as it seemed to Firmin, or quite soon, as it seemed to the king, the gradient of the path diminished, the way widened out, and they found themselves in a very beautiful place indeed. It was one of those upland clusters of sheds and houses that are still to be found in the mountains of North Italy, buildings